General announcements.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year
Okay.
to everybody in the room. Welcome new members. We added 16 newer returning members since our November meeting. This is a good time to remind everybody that it's time to renew your NTAS membership. You can either do it online through our website or via the mail using the form that you receive in your monthly newsletter. This is also a reminder that we provide free NTAS memberships for students. If you would like to get a free NTAS membership, please visit the website and look at the requirements to do so that we can have a record of you joining and wanting a free membership. Thank you to NTAS donors. As I mentioned earlier, almost half of our income this year came from, or last year came from NTAS donors. Your donorships help us provide the scholarships that I described, and will continue to do so, as well as other NTAS activities. Tom Ashmore will be presenting to the Fort Worth Westerners on January 16th. Please contact Bill Williams for more information. On January 20th, we currently have a workday scheduled at the Joe Reed site. Please contact Dana Ritchie to volunteer. If there is inclement weather on that day, the backup day is January 27th. It looks like we're going to get all of our inclement weather in about 48 hours, but hopefully it's gone by January 20th. January 27th is the first volunteer lab day at SMU. That will be a continuous thing every month on a Saturday towards the end of the month, at least through May. Please contact Brian Luchford for more information. I do know that the volunteers will be working through SMU collections. February 24th is a site survey of Finca de Casa. Please contact Jimmy Barrera if you'd like to volunteer. There was a very nice write-up in our most recent newsletter about the site. It sounds very interesting to me, and it's already starting to fill up. This is a general call for anyone interested in being president or historian. I know, so many tears. Yeah, I know. I won't be president in the 2025-2026 cycle. This is a general call for anyone interested in being president or historian for the 2025-2026 NTAS officer cycle. Please contact Alan Rutherford if you are interested. That is me. This is just an announcement that an ad hoc projects committee was formed by our executive committee in December 2023. If you are interested in participating or want some more information about what that projects committee entails, and you didn't read our recent newsletter, please contact Jimmy Barrera and he will provide you with that information. Our February 2024 guest speaker will be Dr. Charles Frederick, who will be discussing some recent research he has been conducting on earth ovens in cave settings. Registration for TAS Academies is open. I have left the Zooarch and Osteology and Geoarchaeology academies on this list, even though they are closed, because you can join a wait list, but I think those wait lists are pretty lengthy at this point. So if you want to go to Academy this spring and spend extra time with me and Steve Lowe and Glenn Lee and Tommy Stanford and Cindy, the Ceramics Academy still has seats available. It will be held at the Fort Worth Nature Center and Refuge. So please, for more information, go to the TAS website. It's a reminder that NTAS scholarships are available to anyone for all TAS academies, the field school, and the annual meeting. Please visit our website for more information. And with that, after all the technical difficulties, I would like to introduce our January 2024 guest speaker, Jessica Lee Hamlin, Shumla. Thank you.
Turn this on. Does everybody hear me okay? Okay. Can they still hear that on the Zoom too?
Are you able to hear? Yes, we got a thumbs up. Thank you.
Try not to touch it with my. That's resolved for the next year, I think. Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me to speak with you today. I'm really excited to be here. It's wonderful to present to archaeologists and to enthusiasts of archaeology. I often have to convince people that Texas has a great deal of cultural resources and archaeological sites that are worthy of our excitement, and that we don't necessarily have to go very far afield to see wonderful things. And it's so nice to preach to the choir tonight and know that you know that already. But as a place to start, before we dive into the rock art of the Lower Pecos and Shumla Archaeological Center, I like to start with reminding everybody that when we talk about Texas history, this is generally what comes into the minds of people. The epic stories, the sagas that happened after big, ships came to the new land, and the battles and all the various things. But in truth, Texas history has a much longer, time frame. And all of those stories are amazing, and they capture our imaginations, and it can be easy when we see the archaeological records, specifically of hunter-gatherer peoples in Texas, and think of them as maybe simpler or less exciting. But the truth is that even in this time, there were just as many epic stories and heroes and heroines and sagas, but all of that can be difficult to tease out of the remains that we find from hunter-gatherers. The stories, the songs, the poetry, the dances, the ways that they painted on their bodies and on things around them that disappeared in the archaeological record. We don't have that. And so that's one of the reasons why at Shumla we really love, what it is that we get to do. Of course, as we all know, when the history began, the people who came here discovered civilizations that were extremely complex, that had cultures and religions that they couldn't believe could possibly exist in another place. And not only that, but they were documenting these belief systems and these cultures in actual books. But what we are finding out at Shumla is that the origin story of many of those amazing Mesoamerican cultures that were discovered actually has its beginnings, some of its beginnings, and a lot of it is encoded in the Lower Pecos Canyonlands of Texas. This amazing, beautiful landscape is actually an ancient Texas library. On the walls in this region, the hunter-gatherer peoples of the Archaic painted over 400 that we know of rock art panels. That's just on the Texas side of the border. And of course, the Rio Grande was not a border at that time. There are many hundreds probably on the other side of the border that we have yet to even dip our toe into how much is down there, and that's part of our plan for the future. But just even on the Texas side, so many of these incredible sites, they rival any rock art sites in all of the world, but they are almost unknown, especially here in Texas. They're actually somewhat better known internationally, because in international places, there is a tradition of recognizing rock art as important and as exciting. Here in Texas, these sites, as you can see, I mean, this is a monumental site at Panther Cave. Just in comparing, and I'll try using my little pointer. Oh yes, comparing the height of this human to the height of this rock art figure. This figure is even taller than the actual human height. If you look over here in the rendering that was drawn by Dr. Carolyn Boyd for a future publication, which is why her copyright is across it, you can see just how detailed these incredible sites are and how they would have had to been created using scaffolding. Can you imagine from your archaeological background how many material resources would be required to create something like this? How much mineral pigment you would have to gather, how much fat you would have to gather, water, you know, the soapy substance at the base of the agave plant to pull together that water and that fat to make a paint, and how much paint you'd have to have and create in order to create something at this scale. It's really, truly mind-blowing. I love this. This is the rest of that. So if you look at this part of the rendering here, this is the rest of that rendering, and there's more underneath this image. And you can see the people standing beneath this, oops, there we go, this feline. So these are pretty incredible sites. Just by a show of hands in the room, since I can't see the Zoom, who has been to one of the rock art sites in the Lower Pecos Canyonlands? Quite a few of you. Awesome, awesome. Has anyone been to Panther Cave? Yes? Oh, you lucky dogs. It's a pretty spectacular site. It's inaccessible right now because of the siltation of the river. Well, for those of you who haven't, let me just put you in place on a map here. We have this area that is kind of here in orange is the Lower Pecos Canyonlands Archaeological District. Of course, the Archaeological District is north of the international border. We were able to achieve a National Historic Landmark in 2021, which was a really, really important step for us. We did it in partnership with the National Park Service and Texas Parks and Wildlife. It took 6 years to create the nomination and make that happen. And it's very exciting for us. I put Fort Worth here so you can kind of see where you are in comparison to the Lower Pecos. If you drive there, it takes about 7 hours. There used to be flights to Del Rio. There are not anymore. You can fly to San Antonio or to Midland and drive from those places. But it is a bit out of the way from North Texas, but not too far. Well worth the journey and a lot closer than France or South America or South Africa to see rock art. Most of the rock art exists in Valverde County. Along this place where the Pecos River, the Devil's River, and the Rio Grande River meet, and then other rivers coming in from Mexico. It's a beautiful landscape, limestone landscape cut deeply by these large rivers, and it was a very sacred place in the archaic past, having all of that amazing water coming together. You're probably familiar with La Junta, which is a bit farther west. It's kind of a similar idea of a La Junta of rivers, and a place where the grasslands and the hunting would have been incredible. And so here, with this art that we have on the walls, those songs, those stories, that poetry that I talked about, that's no longer lost immediately after being uttered. These are encoded now in the walls through this art. So it gives us a totally different window into the cultures of these people. I'll talk a little bit about this in the further on in the presentation, but we know through, of course, the research of folks like the Galt School and others that human occupation in Texas has gone on for many, many thousands of years, 13,000, 14,000, 15,000. Seems like every year they're pushing the boundary. What we have done as part of our research is to research the age of these sites. And we are also pushing that boundary, and I'll talk about that in a little bit in a second. But for whatever reason, these sites were, the art was painted later than human occupation. So human occupation happened for quite a while, and then the art began. And one of our favorite questions and research questions that we hope to answer one day is what changed that made people need to take those songs, take those stories, take those things that had been passed down verbally, passed down on items that they could touch or handle or move around, and encode them in these huge compositional murals on the wall. And that will really be a fascinating study. Here's another one of my favorites, Rattlesnake Canyon mural. And I just love to look at how, oops, let's see here, how to use that button, how intricate these paintings are. I'll just focus on this figure here with the arms outstretched. See kind of a long neck with a head facing sideways, a headdress that we sometimes call rabbit ears, though that doesn't mean that's what they are, it's just kind of how we identify them. This one has what we call a center style, something in the center. It's painted in white. You can follow down and see the legs. At the bottom of the legs, over crossing that is a feline. You see the head and the back and a tail that goes over. From the elbow of the left arm of this figure, it's connected to a whole other figure through this crenellation that is extending down from the arm. Another figure that has what we call a U-shaped head and a curvy center style and filled in black. This figure is within a large black line that goes all, it's hard to draw with this pointer, but here we go. All the way down around it, oops, I lost control. And then more crenellation, oops, more crenellation on the outside of that black line in red. Are y'all kind of getting your rock art eyes a little bit? We have another crenellated full arch over here that is either on top of or beneath this figure. We'll talk about that in a second. With a circle opening at the top. Here's a beautiful figure that has lines extending down from the outstretched arms that suggest wings perhaps, and in a headdress with a large, what looks like a kind of a feather. And again, when I use these terms of what it looks like, that doesn't necessarily mean what it is. You know, we want to make sure that we're not suggesting, sometimes we say, that looks like a choo-choo train or something. Obviously, that's not. But it helps to kind of get an idea of what you're looking at. One of my favorite figures in all of the Lower Pecos is this figure over here. But my cursor is sitting right on top of the circle that is set right in the center of this figure's chest. And from that circle, these wavy lines are extending. Do you see those coming out? And again, arms outstretched, and as so often is true in the Lower Pecos, from one arm extends an atlatl that is loaded with a spear. And from the other arm, lost control again here, extends a long spear with generally kind of it's usually about an oval shape that has spikes on it. We call it a power bundle. It's very typical for Lower Pecos rock art figures to be holding these attributes. And they often have wrist adornments, elbow adornments, headdresses, sometimes hip clusters, so many different things that we keep track of and we mark as we are doing our documentation. But the thing that's the most exciting about these unbelievable pieces of art is that they are decipherable. And the reason why we know why, and I'm going to walk you through a few of the reasons, is that they are rule governed. So this right here is called a dynalite microscope. It's about the size, you can see Deanna, our senior preservation archaeologist, holding it here. It's about the size of 2 AA batteries. You know, you can't take a rock art site and take it off the wall and put it under a microscope to look at it closely. But what we have done, and others have done, is adapt this technology that was originally made for dermatologists to look very closely at things on the skin, and adapted it to take this microscope into the field and use a display to take microscopic images of the paint at places where the paint overlaps. So this is an example of one of those digital microscopic images. The white is the limestone background. And what you're seeing here is black paint and red paint. So from what you can see, does it look like the black paint overlays the red paint, or that the red paint overlays the black paint? Yes,
Red's black. Red
Red.
line's black.
it's red over black, that is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct. So in 98% of our digital microscopic images, and there have been thousands at many, many sites, we have found that the black paint was laid down first, then the red paint, then the yellow paint, and finally the white paint. And One of the things that when we first got into this, we often heard was that these sites were random. And that someone came and painted one figure, and then 100 years later, someone else might have come and painted another figure. And that the meaning would never really be able to be known because they were random. And what we've discovered through this research and others is that these are compositions. And in order to kind of get a view of what that looks like, we're gonna look at the White Shaman mural and just a tiny section of it that's right here. So this is what you were looking at. It's very difficult to see in this picture, but now you can kind of see this top of this beautiful crenellated arch, and there's a figure coming out of it right here. So now we're looking at that crenellated arch and the figure that's coming up. And now we'll look at the way that it was painted. First in black, then red, then yellow, and finally white. And what's really fascinating about this is the way that this then causes these paintings to be enmeshed with each other. So for example, if you look at, let me pick a place. Let's pick the legs, the bottom legs of this guy. And then we look at the black that was painted, then the red that went over top, then the lighter red that goes over top of that, then the yellow that goes over top of the lighter red that went over top of the black and the darker red, and finally the white. You can see that these paintings are thus put together in kind of like a weaving, which is actually a common Native American metaphor for the way that story and other things are woven together. So taking this to the larger mural, I'm going to take away the art and then show you how the entire mural was painted.
Choo-choo.
School bus.
So as you can see, a site like this couldn't be random because it is next to impossible that someone would have come and painted all that black and then happened 100 years later or 1,000 years later to come and fill in some red. It's very clearly compositional, and that's kind of a scientific basis for it being compositional, but we've also discovered a lot of reasons why we know it's compositional based on the stories that they're telling, so we'll get into that too. These are highly patterned. Across the landscape, we see the same figures over and over and over again. If you look, for example, at, and actually, I think I don't have, yes, I do. Here you can see, again, the atlatl in one arm with the spear, that this is the same figure we were just looking at, and again with the power bundle on the other side. So if we look at this figure, Diana is sitting in front of a large figure at the Fate Bell. And here is just kind of to give you a sense of what we're looking at without the color. If you look at the attributes of this figure, we've got sort of a bear's ears kind of look, but with antler tines. We have a mask or something over the face. We have stub wings, a center style, and then larger wings. And because the arms, the wings are covering up where outstretched arms would have been, we have hands that are coming up from the shoulders. And lastly, we have these, what we call single pole ladders that are painted throughout. Now, if we continue to look at another place, still in Fate Bell, but at a different place on the mural, on the left side is a more regular color, on the right side is to pull out some of the paint in a filtered way. You can see again, we have kind of the bear's ears, the antler tines, a mask, something over the face, a center style, stub wings, the hands outstretched from the shoulders, stretching up, and the single pole ladders. but you can tell it looks like a different artist's hand. It's not exactly the same, but it has all the same attributes.
Are they in near proximity?
Those two are. But this one is far. And this one, again, bears ears, antler tines, mask, center style, stub wings, hands from shoulders, single pole ladders. It is identical in terms of attributes, but again, different in the terms of the artist's hand. But you know, at some level, at this point, when you see this kind of thing over and over again, much like the way that we read graphics, they would know when walking into a site exactly who this figure was, right? In this case, this figure actually has a mouth extending up, and what we know now to be speech breath, or the expulsion of air, or the power of speech coming from the mouth. So this may be this character or this figure acting in a different part of its story, right, than from another. One day, as we were doing documentation for the Alexandria project, we came across this site. We could see that there was paint there, but we couldn't really make out what it was. So we did all of our normal things that we do, took it back to the lab, and guess who it was? And the excitement that we felt when we saw this was probably similar to the excitement that someone would feel when they walked into the site and thought, I know who that is, yeah, right? We read images, and you read images every single day. Who did I just show you?
Lower Riding Hood.
Of course it was. And how do you know?
Cultural.
Yeah, her attributes. She's wearing a red riding hood.
And there's a
But, and there's a wolf, and she has a basket, and you know what's in the basket, you know where she's going, you know why there's a wolf next to her, you know what's gonna happen. You know that when she gets to her grandmother's house, the wolf is gonna be in her grandmother's bed. The wolf will have eaten her grandmother. The wolf will, you can even say the things that the wolf's gonna say. You can say the things she's gonna say. My, what big teeth you have. Even if her riding hood was flung over a chair in the picture of a wolf in a bed with a little girl, and you'd still know what part of the story you were in. That's exactly the same with these images. And it's so exciting to slowly begin to crack the code of what they are trying to tell us and what they meant to say. These patterns, these attributes that we now are recognizing across the landscape relate closely to the myths of the Aztec and the Huichol and other Uto-Aztecan language speakers. So we have determined that the people who lived in this place, of course, we don't know what they called themselves, but they lived in the archaic, and they, based on these images, spoke a Uto-Aztecan language. And more than that, these sites can still be read by the people who know the myth, like you knew Little Red Riding Hood. In 2011, Huichol Mata Akame Matsua came to see the White Shaman mural. And when he walked into the mural, he said, they're all here. My grandfather's grandfather's grandfathers. And he could immediately begin the wolf, the this, the that, and knew exactly who and what he was talking, what this image was portraying, and it was pretty incredible. But being a scientific organization, we couldn't just say, well, now we know that all rock art sites can be read, right? That might have been a one-off, who knows? So as we've moved forward with different research projects, this February, well, I guess now last February of 2023, Dr. Carolyn Boyd and Dr. Phil Daring flew to Puerto Vallarta and drove into a place called San Andres Cojamiata to visit a group of Huichol who live in that place, who still practice, and having been so isolated for so many years, they still practice the belief system, they still speak the language. And this is where they stayed. Every day they would get prepared with their high resolution images of the rock art itself, as well as some of the renderings like the ones that you saw of Panther Cave. And they would meet with different of the group there. There were Marakame, which are the shaman, and also elders that they met with. They would show them, like I said, the high resolution image and the full rendering. And so like here, Elder Jesus and his family pointing out all of these different characters as though someone came to you at your family Christmas dinner and showed you a picture of your family, you know, from long ago. They could name and talk about each of these images and what different motifs meant. It was a really incredible time. These are elders Estrella and Tomasita looking at this, and all of these interviews, all of this discussion was recorded and has been now transcribed and is being analyzed for publication and other things later this year. This is one of my favorites, Mata Akame Raphael, again, from the same site that we looked at before. White Shaman shared that this was when the sun was born, and this is the path of the sun, for it is ancient. What's more, not just the indigenous peoples who still speak these languages and still carry these beliefs, but many of the Mesoamerican archaeologists and iconographers who have studied Mesoamerican archaeology and iconography for years also have now been able to look at these sites and are astonished by the connections that they're seeing. We're having a lot of interest from Mexico, and it's a pretty amazing thing to imagine believing that you had a certain amount of knowledge that you had access to, and then suddenly discovering a whole library that came before the amount that you thought you had. It'd almost be like if Egyptologists actually found the Alexandria Library, you know? Here was one of my favorite pictures, Dr. Julio Amador Beck, just in absolute disbelief at the things that he's seeing in the rock art of the Lower Pecos. It's really incredible to share this with the people in Mexico. For a long time, it was hard to talk about the rock art from a scientific manner and to make these connections, because there's a lot of sense that rock art is kind of a subjective science. It's difficult to study scientifically, and Shumla's been working really hard to make sure that people can see that you can study it scientifically and you can begin to unlock the secrets that are encoded within it with the help of indigenous peoples and peoples like the archaeologists in Mexico who have studied this iconography in a different way for so many years. And we just can't wait to continue that relationship. So where we come to is that what was or is a 500-year-old pre-Columbian codex, of course, that we all accept to be an Aztec codex, what we have in the Lower Pecos are pre-Columbian codices. They are 6,000, 5,000, 4,000, 3,000-year-old pre-Columbian codices. I'll talk a little bit more about their age in a second, but that's why Shumla's mission is preserving the oldest books. Because one of the ways that we want to help people understand that rock art is not just scrawls and scratches that no one will ever understand. These murals in the Lower Pecos are truly books, just like any codex is. They just didn't write them on paper with pens. They wrote them on canyon walls with amazing paint that has lasted thousands of years. Unfortunately, the bad news is that it is disappearing. Again, here at Rattlesnake Canyon, if you look at this amazing figure, and again, can I just ask, there is so much red paint. How long did it take, not even to paint this figure, just to make the paint to paint this figure? It blows me away every time. So this is that figure on the mural, and you can see this mural 105 feet wide from end to end. And when I was walking you through the crenellated arch, this figure is over here. Do you see the arch there, the arms, and then here's the figure with the heart, the center section there with the lines coming from it. This mural is painted in this canyon against that back wall. And every year when the flash floods come, that is, it's so rural, it's so far out, we're almost never there to just happen to snap a picture when the flash floods come. So in 2008, somebody happened to be there. Fortunately, they didn't drown, they got up to high ground. But every time this happens, because of the water dynamics of the region, the Amistad Reservoir stops all the movement of water as it's flowing quickly, down, trying to get out to the Gulf of Mexico, and this causes siltation that's filling up the Pecos, it's filling up the Devils, and all of their tributaries. And so every year the water rises. So that is really one of the main underpinnings of why Shumla exists. Because this is now like finding a library and then just watching it burn, right? It's an incredible resource and it's worth preserving. And so that's really what we're here for. We do this preservation work through documentation, research, stewardship, and education. And I realize now that I'm going slowly and I need to speed up because it's 7:45 almost. This is my team, right? We are a wonderful team. We have 10 folks right now, and we generally keep about 10 folks and have just amazing people on our team. We have been around for 25 years. We were founded in 1998. And we have 3 offices now. I am seated here, but travel to the others a lot. We have the San Marcos office that we just opened in 2022. And we have the Comstock office right there in the center of the mix. Through documentation, because we cannot save the rock art in situ, we can't put anything on it that would keep it safe. The limestone is so porous, the water comes from behind. It would destroy it behind whatever we put on it. We can't get it off. It's so fragile. It is going to disappear in some places. And so our main tool for documentation is digital. We do this using high resolution gigapans, which is a full panel image that is captured from a gimbal that takes photographs one after the other, all up and down the site. So if your site is 105 feet wide, you can imagine that takes quite a few days. And then a software that stitches it all together in high resolution so that you have a 2D high resolution image. And then we do the same thing, but with our hands. Oh, sorry, high resolution gigapan, I think yes, there we go. Same thing with our hands for 3D modeling through something called structure from motion photogrammetry, where we stand with a camera and we start bent way back and then go all the way to this point and then take a step and start all the way back up again. And so this way we can see the way that the wall interacts with the art, because there are a lot of times when there are places where there's a seep or there's a ledge or there's something that they've actually used as part of the art of the mural. And to only see it in 2D would take away from that. During the Alexandria Project, which I mentioned, we called it the Alexandria Project again because we were trying to save an ancient library. And so it was a way again to help people understand the magnitude of what we were endeavoring to do in an archaeological context that people often do understand, which is Egyptology. We visited 235 sites and we mapped and recorded each, digitally imaged and 3D modeled. And then we managed all of the data that created, which was 60 terabytes of data, and have now made it accessible to researchers, and it's being used too by museums. If you know anyone at a museum who would like to incorporate rock art, Texas rock art into their exhibits, we just opened a portion of the Hall of the Americas at the Houston Museum of Natural Science, has a 3D projection of halo shelter. We also preserve through research. I don't have time today to really dive into the Hearthstone Project, which is meaty, but this is a collaboration with Texas State University. We're in our 3rd and final year of the Hearthstone Project this year, and it is using archaeological science, formal art analysis, and indigenous knowledge to reveal the mysteries of when and how the murals were produced and what they were created to communicate. It's been supported by the National Science Foundation and the National Endowment for the Humanities. And it is our multidisciplinary scientific research for, further into particularly those sites that are highly complex, highly endangered, that we really need to get to and fully document and unlock before they may be lost. Part of that too is work in Shumla's plasma oxidation laboratory. This is Dr. Karen Steelman. She was part of the group, started with Dr. Marvin Rowe at Texas A&M, who figured out a way to radiocarbon date rock art. If you know anything about radiocarbon dating, you usually need a pretty big chunk of something, charcoal or something organic, in order to get a date. Through plasma oxidation, which is a different kind of combustion that can be used for a much, much, much smaller sample, we're able to take very, very little paint and actually combust it, get the carbon atoms out of it, send it to be counted, and date not only the paint itself, but also the oxalate that grew on the rock before the paint was laid down, and the oxalate that then grew on the paint after the paint was laid down. So we can bracket our dates and date the paint. And I say we, but it's Karen. We Shumla as a royal we, but very much Karen. So this is one of my favorites because this is so groundbreaking and this is part of what we're going to be publishing. The art, we had known for some time that we thought it was about 4,000 years old. The research that we've done through Hearthstone has pushed those dates back to 5,500 years ago. And it may even be that we find even older dates at the beginning of this, this painting tradition. But it continued, as you can see, up until AD 600 and possibly further. So this same manner of painting these murals in this very circumspect and specific location, all throughout these canyons, happened for 4,000 years. And it's such an incredible thing to imagine that people continued to come back to this place and as a community, gather the resources, create the paint, work out the story. And I haven't even begun to get into solar and lunar and stellar alignments and all the different things. They would have needed to go to these sites and make marks and do things to figure out where on the panel they wanted the paint to go. It took years to figure out the composition, the story they were going to tell, how they were going to tell it, what it was going to look like, how they were going to paint it. And then when they decided it was time to do it, to get together as a community and sacrifice even the food off their plates, the fat that they needed for health, to put in paint, to put this knowledge on the wall for 4,000 years. It's really incredible. So I'm very excited about this coming year as we continue the publication of these analyses. But what we're learning is that, like the late Dr. Alfredo Lopez Austin said, despite differences among Mesoamerican religions, Lopez Austin identified a conceptual basis, a hard nucleus or an archaic core of belief that all of these various Mesoamerican religions shared at one time in the further past. That's why it's called the archaic core. And what we are seeing in the Lower Pecos, we believe, is that archaic core. So that those beliefs that came first. And then as the different religions evolved and as things moved forward, there are still bits and pieces of all those various motifs and beliefs and words that were used that then are shown in the different Mesoamerican religions that we're more familiar with. You can see in a timeline that the Lower Pecos rock art overlaps Olmec, Teotihuacan, the beginning of Maya, and there's so much more to be learned about the ways that these belief systems overlap and how things were originated. There's also great connections between the Southwest, Southeast. I mean, so much to be learned. So yes, publications in progress. Keep up with us for sure. We also preserve the rock art through stewardship, working with the landowners very closely. We bring them in together to hear what we're doing, to learn about why the rock art is even unique, to them growing up with it. It's just, something they've got on their property, and to recognize that this is something that is truly World Heritage level. We also bring together the people that come in contact with the rock art, the Border Patrol, the National Park Service, the game wardens and such, who might be able to tell us if they notice deterioration or vandalism. And we take the families with us when we go to document and go to research. And we love it when we can bring generations. This is the Gibbs family and their daughter and son. To see this art, to see us get excited about it when we see it, to tell them the stories of what we're seeing, and to really care about preserving it and being a protector of the rock art as they continue to pass the land down in their families. And finally, we preserve the art through education. This is a group of our Shumla scholars building the 10-chamber plasma oxidation system. It's the only plasma oxidation system like this in the world. And in the tiny, this is all students in the senior class. They got to be the ones to build that system with Karen. They learn, we have a course each year. They have classes each, I think, Tuesday and Thursday. And they go on field trips with us and learn about this art that is their heritage in their backyard. We also have internships, field schools in collaboration with Texas State University, and treks that you also can come on and visit these sites. If you go to our website and go to the visit page, you can see the treks that are coming up. And there's even treks here. If you look at this virtual trek to Panther Cave, there are ones that you can take part in that are not requiring of hiking. So if you would like to come to the region, see the incredible views, but maybe not hike down into a canyon and back out again, there are also options for you. But please do visit our website. There's so much more to learn. All our presentations, our publications. We also have our lunch and learns every third Wednesday of each month. And one of our archaeologists or folks from our team give a lecture. We also have our YouTube channel that has all our presentations. And of course, we are a nonprofit as well. So I'm always looking for support. And thank you so much for having me.
Any questions in the room?
What does Shumla mean?
Oh, that's a great question. It's actually a location name. So when we were founded, so Carolyn Boyd was our founder, Dr. Carolyn Boyd, and I was an undergraduate student at Texas A&M. She was a PhD student. And we at first called it Cultural Communication Systems Institute because we were we had a broader vision. She had a broader vision working with the other founders to include all types of cultural communication, not just rock art. But as we have gotten small, kind of more focused and recognizing the preservation need of and the vastness of the rock art of the region, we changed our mission. And Shumla is actually the name of the railroad station that was at the place where our campus, the land of our campus. So it's a bit of a long story, but.
I was gonna ask. Obviously, you know the base materials for the paint that they were using, but has either any analysis been done on the fragments to try and determine exactly those exact plant components to create the color in that area?
Yeah, absolutely. So Karen, aside from being unbelievably, skilled at radiocarbon dating, she is a chemist. And so, yes, we have done, and she has done a lot of chemical analysis and hoping to do more about which minerals were used. For the red, it was iron oxide, as you'd expect. For the yellow, same. For the black, manganese, and for the white, she's gonna kill me, I forget. It took longer to figure out. Yeah, I don't remember, but it's in one of our publications or presentations. And then, yes, she's using other ways to determine what the fats were, what the plant materials were, and so much to learn still from the way that was done.
And so far, all of those materials, are they local, or is there any type of evidence for distribution?
Well, there would have had to have been some distribution, probably just by the sheer size of some of these sites. You just probably, and again, I can't necessarily speak for them. There might have been a huge amount of iron oxide right in front of the shelter that is now gone because they used it all. But I think that there had to have been some movement of resources to bring them to the sites. And one of the most important would be water. You know, being able to move that much water, that, you know, they didn't use ceramics, and then using that kind of soapy substance in agave to make that fat and water mix. I mean, you know, that's a lot of harvesting. There's just so much work. And, you know, making cordage to make scaffolding to get up there, you know, to find the sotol stalks or the trees that you could build that with. I mean, just so much work went into these.
How did they apply the pigment to the rock?
They had paintbrushes that they made from feathers or rabbit hair or human hair. You know, probably shafted in the similar fashion as spear points, and yeah. And there's also evidence of splatter and you know, possibly blowing, and so many. I mean, I think you name it. If there's a way to get paint on the wall, they were using it.
What was the name of that instrument that she was reading?
Oh, a digital microscope. It's called a Dinolite. DINOLITE.
So you've dated a lot of these panels. Is there a physical line to them? I mean, do they start up canyon and move down with age?
Oh, if only we knew. Would you like to become a master's student and come and do it?
Isabel can do that.
Yes, please. Yes, so that, one of the things that we're doing through the Hearthstone project is selecting, we're radiocarbon dating 10 sites. And we've selected them based on geography, based on motif. You know, another question is, are sites with feather hip clusters from this age? And then sites with the, you know, kind of rabbit ear headdress from a totally different time period. You know, there's so much left yet to learn about the geography and the chronology. But we're also trying to use that to lay the chronology on the dirt archaeology. What we know from the physical remains as well. So yes, we need more researchers, we need more students to you know, dive into these questions. And I'm hoping that our publications from Hearthstone will, you know, get some of that excitement rolling.
I didn't see any green in any of the lower slides you showed. Is green down in the Lower Pecos? I know there's some out in West Texas and New Mexico.
Not in the Lower Pecos.
Have you found any connection between the Lower Pecos rock art and the Panhandle or other places, New Mexico, like subject or, you know, time period or something like that?
Yes, and so much more research needs to be done. Again, just like the same answer. There are motifs that are so clearly in that core of belief that was so deep in time. And I just can't wait to uncover, you know, what that tells us about migration patterns and evolution of groups and beliefs and families. And I mean, who knows what we're gonna uncover. This library is a key stopping point in that prehistory to really put a nail in the ground for, you know, when something was. So I think there's so much left to learn. Yes.
Let's take some questions from Zoom if there are.
No questions on Zoom. Yeah, wait, we got one. Okay. Would you comment on the damage caused by early efforts to preserve the rock art?
Sure. So in early efforts to preserve the rock art, there were some mistakes. And much like even today, when people, sometimes people who are out there for completely other reasons might, you know, scratch a name on the wall or something, it's so rarely malicious. It's almost always just not knowing its importance or not knowing what the long-term effect will be. There was some use of kerosene on sites to bring out the color and a belief that maybe that kerosene would help seal in the paint. But unfortunately, one of the main side effects of that is that we can never radiocarbon date a site that has had kerosene applied to it, because obviously the date would be fossil fuel related and not taint related. But no one could have possibly known that was going to be a side effect of the addition of kerosene to a site. And also there were, efforts to do tracing, which, I mean, some of these efforts, you have to weigh cost benefit, getting some knowledge and understanding what it is that you're seeing. And so I understand why, people might have put paper up and trying to do some tracing. Of course, we just try now not to touch it. But, really, it's much more the environment that is affecting the rock art than it is any previous human efforts to preserve it.
So during your excellent presentation at annual meeting this year,
Oh, thank you.
you talked, or the group talked of the indigenous people in Mexico coming up to do some more investigation, interpretation. Are you going to try to develop a narrative of what all of this means and accumulate the story, so to speak?
Probably not all of it.
Yeah.
But yes, absolutely. Work is already underway even further beyond the visit to the Huichol. There are a few folks that are actually here in Texas that the team have been able to talk with and work with. But there's so much coming from it. The publications are going to be mind-blowing. It's really, really fantastic. And one of the best parts about it is that the people who are reading these sites are so excited that we are making this effort to bring this knowledge back to light. And it, it's wonderful, because if they said, this isn't for you and you should stop, that would be really heartbreaking. I mean, we probably would have to, but it would be heartbreaking. And so it's wonderful that they're so excited that we are really, wanting to learn this. Yeah.
You mentioned the structure from motion, and I know that that is something extraordinarily useful, not only in photogrammetry, but in rock art specifically. But have you also done any type of a LiDAR scan of the whole thing to create 3D printed models later on, potentially?
Yeah, LiDAR is so much more expensive, but we have used it in a few places. So we can only do that when we can raise the money. But yes, if you go to our website, there's a place where there is a LiDAR video of a fly-through Panther Cave. And so, yes, I mean, LiDAR is top shelf. We would love to be able to do that everywhere.
It's lots of fun.
Yeah. Someday, there was a time when one technology was hyper expensive, and now it's pennies on the dollar. So maybe someday it'll be like, LiDAR.
We have time for one more, so one more question in the room.
Thank you. In a short time, we could tell you're the guru of this place. These families you showed, this is their land. I mean, I guess you say they own that place. They only give Shumla exclusive team to study this, or you have other opposing groups that are going there and photographing and something like that?
That's a good question. So most of the rock art is on private property in the Lower Pecos. There is the Seminole Canyon State Park, highly recommend a visit, and the National Amistad National Recreation Area, and a few others. The Nature Conservancy has some sites, but for the most part, they are on private property. So over the course of our 25-year history, we have been building relationships with landowners to gain access to the sites for preservation purposes. And we are very careful to have high integrity and be very careful about the way that we use that permission. And if someone says absolutely not, then the answer is absolutely not. But generally speaking, as land changes hands and as things progress, there was a time when folks were more worried about something like an eminent domain issue. If we talk too much about the World Heritage value of something, that there may be someone who wanted to come and take the land, and they had a precedent for that because it happened to make Seminole Canyon State Park. But there's so much rock art, and there's so many ways now that people can experience it without having to eminent domain, a very rural and very difficult to get to place and on the planet. We're you know, building more of a trust with the landowners to be able to access sites more and more, and it's so spectacular. And frankly, I think we thought we were getting to the end of the number of sites that we'd know about, and more and more, day by day, people are coming out of the woodwork. There's just so much. It's so incredible how vast this library is, and with, you know, more money and more staff, we would just keep, you know, growing and continuing to preserve these sites as much as possible. And no, we don't have any competitors to say per se. Gosh, if that meant somebody else was preserving the rock art, I don't know if I'd mind.
All right, please join me in thanking. And with that, I will bring the January 11th, 2024 meeting of the North Texas Archaeological Society to a close. Thank you.
Right on Zoom.
I put some stuff over here if you guys wanna, salute it. Some of my business cards or a brochure.